Hi guys, welcome to Love&Lust audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks, so please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it. Well, let's go to read this book. The Human, You Are Delicious, chapter 6 to 10. Chapter Years, Cooking for the Chef. Frank led me through the Kingsland Hotel and down a long series of hallways to a private kitchen. When he opened the door, it was like all of my fears and worries about working, especially for Leon, had disappeared. It was every chef's dream: stainless steel appliances, high-end fridges, and endless supplies to make any delicacy imaginable. I had no idea what I envisioned, but this was not it. This is wow, I stated as I ran my finger along the matching steel island top. And then the smell hit me again. The blood perfume, and it was the strongest it had been all day. After my first interview, I'd come to realize that the concentration of blood perfume increased the closer I was to Leon or places where he spent a substantial amount of time. Considering the density of it here, this was one of those locations. To make sure there was no mistake, I turned and stuffed the nose plug back in when Frank wasn't looking. It would help at least until I could take another tranquilizer. Does Leon cook often? I asked as I set my toolkit down on the counter. The chef, he corrected me, cooks in here from time to time for more pots. Fiennes spends a lot of time here on his own accord. So that explained it. Then immediately switching gears, Frank began pointing to a few items on the counter. Here are the ingredients you're gonna need. As for what to do with them, it's your call. Holy shit, beside the stove was a 100-kilogram mighty lobster, a top-quality fillet, and various expensive supplementary ingredients. There was actually caviar, hulla, and really good caviar. This thing was more than gold. Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Mason, dressed in a crisp blue, 3-piece suit. Thank you, Frank, for your help. Feel free to head back to the kitchens. I can take it from here. Frank's sus face contorted ever so slightly. I could tell he was a man who took pride in his work and station within the Kingsland Hotel, and being told what to do, especially by someone who was clearly younger than him, was a massive blow to his ego. But instead of complaining, Frank inhaled and gave a short bow before exiting and leaving me alone with Mason. Mason approached me, his cologne resembling a musky forest, and continued Frank's speech. You are free to use the equipment and materials here. Press the bell beside you should you need anything. Use the bell over here if you want the dishes served. Oh, and one more thing, don't start cooking until you're called upon. The boss requires the temperature of the ingredient. I knew Leon was meticulous. That's all the reason he's still the highest regarded chef in the city. However, I didn't stick still. It wasn't truly my place, and if I wanted to keep this job, I needed to swallow whatever was thrown at me. Do you have any questions? Mason prompted. Shit, I had zoned out. You no sir, I answered, hoping something wouldn't come up later. All right, Mason smiled. I'll leave you to it. Good luck, Vicky. And with that, I was left to my own devices. Don't start cooking until called upon. I drummed my fingers on the counter, and not long later, found myself staring at the red light in the kitchen. Waiting for the signal, it felt like an eternity. What? And trust me, I knew what that felt like. Then it suddenly lit up. Finally, I decided to begin with the lobster. I grabbed a pot of water and placed it on the back burner. The clicking sound of the gas stove brought me instant joy. Once the water boiled, I set the lobster in the steamer. I knew what I would do the second I saw what I was working with. The freshest ingredients had to maintain their original taste, providing zest and serving as the base flavor. Next came the beef. I cut the large tenderloin into 2 parts. One was used to make steak, and the other was used to make my hometown's specialty, black pepper beef granule. The longer I worked, the more I became accustomed to the heavy blood perfume. However, despite my best efforts, it still went straight through my nose and into my head, making me instantly dizzy. When the first course was ready, I rang the service bell. Soon after, Mason appeared and took it out. Maybe I finished quickly, I could get off work earlier for the day and wouldn't have to meet him face to face. But as usual, things didn't go as expected. When dessert was finally ready, I was elated, hoping that I could clean up, do the dishes, and then return home. That was until Mason entered. "Vicky, chef would like you to deliver the last dish yourself," he said in the adjoining room. He had to be kidding me. The universe had to be kidding me. No matter how hard I tried to stay away, it kept pulling me back in. I placed the dessert on a tray and wheeled it to the space next door. I took a deep breath and entered, keeping my eyes cast down on the meal in front of me. "Hello, chef," I began. "I am glad you enjoyed today's meals. Here is the final dish, a freshly made Black Forest cake with cherry flavoring." I lifted the top of the casing and revealed the perfectly curated piece. God, the fragrance in the room was already making me dizzy. I wanted nothing more than to leave. If I continued to stay here, something would definitely happen. I straightened my stance and folded my hands behind my back. I tried my best to remain calm. When I felt confident enough to look up, I glanced at the dishes on the table and couldn't help but realize how wrong I was. There they sat still the way I had cooked them. What did I do wrong? The beef was getting cold. What was the point of requesting temperature checks? If he wasn't gonna let it... "I wanted to test you," Leon began as if he could hear my thoughts, "to see how well you could follow instructions. Please sit." His voice was stern, and yet his sentence sounded somewhat of a mix between a statement and a question. I got the impression that Leon asking anyone to do anything was very unheard of. But yet, here it was happening. I lifted my gaze to look at him for the first time that day and found him staring back at me. He was fixated on my features, like he was trying to piece together something about me that he couldn't quite figure out. The blood perfume continued to puncture through my nose plugs, and something inside me responded instantly to it, and Leon's request. Once I sat, Leon reached out and pushed the first dish in between the two of us, and put a set of utensils in front of me. "Eat!" The haze lifted for a split second as confusion overwhelmed my mind. I am sorry, chef." Leon sat up in his seat and folded a napkin over his lap. "I'm inviting you to have dinner with me." After a while, when I didn't respond, his eyes flipped back to me, immediately prompting butterflies in my stomach. I shook my head and pulled the utensils slowly from their sheath before beginning to break apart the lobster. I didn't need to look at him to know Leon was watching my every move. Once I placed a free piece onto the fork and into my mouth, Leon started to mimic my movement. I witnessed the moment when the tenderness of the meat and the rich seafood flavor conquered his tongue. Leon closed his eyes and carefully savored the taste in his mouth. In that moment, I knew that I had accomplished something. Soon after his first bite, Leon dug in for another almost instantly after my attraction to him growing by the second. Soon enough, I found myself becoming more and more incapable of fighting the smell of blood perfume and used my canine tooth to prick at my lip to distract myself. "How is it?" Leon's soft voice jumped in. I looked up at him. Was he really asking me how I felt about my own cooking? I knew my talents and knew that it was entirely delicious, but how do I tell him that? What if he disagreed? Would that make me look bad? Then suddenly, I heard a soft chuckle pulling me from my thoughts. Wait, was Hada laughing? Leon adjusted himself in his seat once again, this time falling into a slight hunch. I waited for an explanation, but when it didn't come, I spoke. "Chef." "Sorry," Leon replied with one last chuckle. "I just thought of something funny." Somehow that didn't seem true, but I let it go. Leon's laughter slowed, and then he sat up in his chair, resting his elbows on the desk and interlocking his rough and bandaged fingers. "Do you want to know what I think?" he asked, not breaking eye contact with me. All I could do was nod. "I think you read talented, Vicky. I am. Not gonna lie, I didn't think you'd be able to make something memorable from the ingredients, but this, what? Well, you impressed me." Did I hear that right? Did I impress the Leon Knightley? Another smile formed on his lips, and he gave a small nod. "You did. Good job." Wait, am I crazy? What? Or did he? No, I am definitely crazy, only there was a certain aura about him that told me otherwise, and how his attention focused on me. Quad stated that maybe I wasn't wrong about him sensing the blood bond between us. The smell grew more intense, our connection was building, and the blood perfume was letting me know. I heard from those who had bonded that the more you built a foundation with your mate, the denser their scent grew. They weren't lying, but did that mean we were? "You can't go in there." Mason's shout from behind the door woke me from my thoughts, and Leon's gaze snapped from mine, creating an unexpected pang in my chest. The office door was forcefully pushed open, and it banged against the wall, with the blinds clashing together in response. I turned around, startled to find the source of the noise, and there, glaring directly at me, stood Asip. Chapter D, dinner plan. Leon. Asip has. Vicky turned to face me. I could feel my body return to its usual rigid state. Then I sighed. "How many times have I told you to not only knock, but also not interrupt me during work hours?" "You were constantly working, Leon. If I didn't storm in here, I'd never see you." "Thank God," I muttered low enough under my breath that no one else could hear. There was a reason for that. I set down my utensils and slightly rolled my eyes. "Is there something I can help you with, Asip?" Asip crossed her arms over her chest. I really hated when she was like this. I ran a high-end restaurant. The last thing I needed was her dramatics. "Did you forget dinner?" "Asip," I began. "I've told you countless times I can go out with you. Not with just me, but with the owner of Ches Local. My father spent a large amount of time looking to get you this meeting. Do you know how difficult it is to get in with Tony? He said I'm doing you a huge favor, and..." Her eyes fell to the plates behind Vicky, judging by the food here. "Oh, you did forget. Fuck." I put the lid over the plate again and looked to Mason. "Call Tony and tell him I am running a few minutes behind. Say we hit a huge dinner rush. I am sure he'll understand." Mason gave a nod and walked out of the office, heading toward the nearest phone. In muffled tones, I could hear him talking and adverted my attention back to Asip, who still stood in the center of the room, staring. "Is there anything else?" I asked. She scowled. "I see you didn't take my advice." Her gaze fell onto Vicky, who sat quietly in the seat across from me. "Why would I take your advice? This is my business, remember?" Her thoughts were screaming at me. All I could hear were the same questions playing over and over again in her mind. Why did I love her like every other man out there? How was I not attracted to her? What could she do to make me care about her? The answer to all of it was simple. Nothing. There was nothing she could do, because it wasn't her looks, I wasn't her appearance. It was who she was. We had no similarities, no connection. It was emptiness. We were using each other for benefit. And that was purely it. Asip stared back and forth at myself and Vicky, and then his mouth slowly hung open. "No way. Are you in love with her? That's why you recruited her, isn't it? So you could have the sick foreplay of food before sex. Are you fucking crazy?" "Yeah," I stated, standing from my chair. "Asip, you need to go." "I am not blind, Liam." "Ma'am, I heard Vicky's sad voice pipe up in an effort to save me. I respected her guts and comfortability with this incredibly unprofessional experience. "Don't you know, Ami?" Ossip spat out, glaring her down as she pointed a direct finger at her. "I know exactly what your game is. You just want to get close to Leon and tell all your little friends you're sleeping with the richest and most notable chef in the city. You're a child and a fucking disgrace, so why don't you go play dress up somewhere else and leave us alone?" I couldn't take this anymore. It was getting way out of hand enough. I heavily growled. Asupa's body jumped at my suddenly raised voice, and I noticed Vicky slide back into her chair. She was scared. I didn't need to hear her thoughts to know it. I was used to people being terrified of me, but that didn't change the pang inside of me that appeared at her reaction. I looked to her, softening my gaze in hopes to help her relax. "Vicky, you can go now. Your work for today is done." "No, you can't leave." Ossip dared to interject. "You have to stay here now and explain everything to me. Do you want to fuck my fiancé, Vicky?" "Wait. Vicky, please ignore her. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. She turned and glanced at me. Her eyes were dark but full of uncertainty. I reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, surprising myself with my empathy. I hadn't felt empathy for anyone in a long time. Qua, it was nice. Vicky nodded and made her way toward Osipa. She stopped short of her and smiled softly, to which Osip frowned. Vicky then took that as her note to leave and walked out the door, closing it behind her. As soon as she left, Osip turned to me. She was furious. Did she think that she could just prance in here? And no, I snarled, stepping around the desk and closing in the distance between us. I was beyond furious. I couldn't even comprehend my emotion. You need to listen, and you need to listen good. This is my business. It is how I pay for everything from our fucking house to the imported leather shoes on your feet. You do not get to walk in here whenever you like, and you do not get to talk to my employees like that. I'm gonna say this once more, and I'll say it nicely. Leave your fucking dramatics at home, or I will not be there when you return. She didn't flinch. In fact, she remained stone, cold, stoic, and utterly unfazed. She was challenging me, and it was a fight she was determined to win. Was that a threat? She stated, more than question. Take it how you want to. My eyes were locked on hers for the first time in a long time, and I realized just how much hate hers truly held. At this moment, Mason pushed open the office door. It was just the right time. Sir, Mr. Local has agreed to a half-hour time difference. Finally, something to get me the fuck out of here. Thank you, Mason, I answered, not breaking contact with Osip. We were just finishing up here. Show Miss Spencer to the kitchens and have Frank prepare her a meal. She must be starving. Yes, sir, Miss Spencer, this way, please. Osip took a moment. After a beat, she huffed and then chuckled under her breath before turning and leaving out the door with Mason. As soon as she closed it behind her, I let the breath I had been holding in to calm myself go. I then looked down at my watch. 2 minutes. I had to get a suit. There was no time to stop at the house on the way, so I packed my tools and grabbed my eye before leaving. Only as I made my way through the kitchen and said my goodbyes, I could not help but focus on anything except what I overheard from Vicky during our meal. What the hell was a blood bond? Chapter Rio, dance with the devil, Vicky. As soon as I entered through the front door of my house and it clicked closed behind me, I felt the weight of the previous altercation fall off my shoulder. I couldn't believe what I'd heard Osip ask Leon, and I couldn't get it out of my brain. Did I want to fuck her fiancé? I mean, I couldn't deny the feelings his blood perfume brought to me. The way it completely enveloped my very being. And some part of me, even despite his stoic demeanor, felt that a piece of him recognized it too. Like our souls understood all of this before we did. But I couldn't give in as much as I wanted to. I couldn't go through it all again. The betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all too much the first time around. And that wasn't even a blood bond. What would happen if this didn't work out? If it couldn't I might as well be a berserker. So I needed to stop it, separate myself from him and Kingsland Hotel for good. I took off my shoes and sat down on the couch, cross-legged, opening my laptop to my email. I inhaled as I began to type. From Vicky Eaton email to CC, Leon Knightley, link Knightley email subject letter of resignation. Dear Mr. King Hartley, thank you for taking my interview and selecting me from many candidates to join your team. I've learned a lot from working with you during this period, but due to unforeseen events, I have to step back from my position. I apologize for the short notice. Sincerely, Vicky Eaton. I reread the message, my finger hovering over the mouse pad. I needed to do this. I know I did. I had 3 years left until I needed to hibernate, and I didn't want to spend them in a preposterous soap opera, but my cursor, which still sat on the send button, told a different story. My mind was plagued by thoughts of my previous life. Wait, the one I held before I was turned. I didn't think of the consequences then. Why would I? I was crazily in love. And when you trust someone as much as I trusted Marcus, train your need or desire to question them. But that naivety was also what almost got me killed. Touching the scar on my chest, I quickly hit the button with the little bit of courage that I found. Just from 2 short interactions with Ossip, I could tell that her and Leon's relationship was very similar. Everything about their situation was questionable. I couldn't help but wonder what he saw in her. My head was spinning, and then it dawned on me. Why, I hadn't had a tranquilizer since this morning. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the final bottle. I gulped it down and felt my body respond positively. Not long after, a notification popped up on my laptop alerting me of a new email. My heart fell. It was from Leon. I didn't want to open it. I had just given up my dream job, and now here I sat, staring at the screen that probably would end my entire career. I took a deep breath. Was I scared because of Leon's response as a boss or as my unknowing mate? My cursor moved to the notification and clicked on it. The email instantly popped up, and my eyes scanned the opening line. From Leon Knightley, Lake Knightley Shu email. Did you CC Vicky Eaton, Vicky Eaton, exchange email. Resubject letter of resignation. Dear Miss Eaton, come to my office tomorrow morning, 2 o'clock. No signature, no thank you. Very Leon. I tried to push him away. And yet here he stayed. Any other employer would have taken up my offer and let me go, but not Leon. No, of course not. Leon. I quickly slammed my laptop closed. I couldn't do this not right now anyways. I stood and walked to the kitchen. I needed to calm my nerve. I took out the ingredients and a good wine and began to prepare my dinner. My freshly sharpened knife slid through the carrots and diced the onions easily. It was almost climactic. I could feel my anxiety wash away as the oil sizzled against the base of the tenderloin steak. After minutes of flipping and seasoning, it was finally done. I even took out a tablecloth and briefly decorated the house I needed this night, even if it was alone. I dished myself the perfect size bite and pressed down on the perfectly tender meat to test its center. I watched as tiny bits of red juice poured out and smiled to myself. This would make everything disappear, even if for a moment. I placed the plate down on the tabletop and settled into my seat when the doorbell rang. Classic, anything to ruin the first taste. I made my way to the door with a tiny bit of me hoping that maybe Leon had decided to not way for a response and show. Fuck this blood bond I was already getting attached to his perfume, and it was corrupting me. No, I needed to forget it. The ring. Yeah, I am coming, I called out. I swear if it was the kindred messenger again. I grabbed a hold of the doorknob and turned it, opening it to a sight that made my jaw drop. Vicky Eaton, you've surprised me. Your neighborhood is a lot nicer than I imagined, but your interior. Ossip stood in the doorway with her hands on her hips as she surveyed my room. What the hell did she know my address? Yeah, you. Oh, what? Crap. I was stuttering again, but I couldn't help it. I knew she was either here for a fight or forgiveness, and knowing her, it definitely wasn't the latter. She laughed at my response. I don't know what Leon sees in you. But he is why I am here. Look, Vicky, we have something in common, and that, unfortunately, is my fiance, so I am here to make you a proposition. She had to be kidding, right? There was no way, except when I looked into her green eyes, I could tell. Wow, she was serious, and I was trapped in Vicky. Well, she said as I continued to stand in the doorway in utter surprise. Are you planning on letting me in? Wild or taught? How did you get past the gates? No human should be allowed entry onto kindred grounds. We kept ourselves hidden away so we wouldn't run the risk of accidental drainings or death. Another rule that the predators wanted to abolish. Oh, you mean your security guard? She asked. Yeah, he was sleeping. Guess you don't get many visitors. So I let myself in. She was right. We didn't tea with our community hidden so far back in the woods. There was no need to be alert consistently unless there were immediate threats. But as far as any kindred knew, there were no other clans for a mile. Ossip wandered past me and into my house, looking around the space as if trying to find fault with my living environment. I wasn't the most organized and decorative person out there still. When you've lived for hundreds of years, you come to realize trivial things like decor and name brands don't matter as much as a comfortable and internally satisfying lifestyle. Make yourself at home, I say, still in awe of her audacity. She really thought she owned everything and everyone. I barely knew her, and I already despised her. I grabbed a few clothes off the nearest armchair and gestured at her to sit. However, instead Ossip glanced at it with disdain and made her way to the sofa before realizing that it also wasn't true to her taste. She searched the room for another spot, and when she couldn't find one, she switched her purse to her other hand and sighed. Never mind, I'll just stand. I wasn't going to oppose. I went to the sofa and sat down, waiting for her to speak when she didn't. I broke the silence. So, what can I help you with? I am here to help you, she began, her eyes still scanning the interior of my hours. Make a sort of deal. I sighed. Is this about Leon? Because honestly, she waved a hand in the air. It's over with the argument. I mean, I am not apologizing, but I am also not saying I wasn't out of line. Look, I care about Leon, and I care about his future, and I will do anything to save that. Was she for real? Did she actually think it was okay to barge into my community, knock on my door, and then spew this load of crap, whatever she was offering? I didn't want it, but it didn't stop me from letting her continue, just to see where it would go. So I am here to offer you a position as a personal chef. Hold on, did I hear her right? I straightened my posture and interlocked my fingers around my knee. Didn't you want me fired 3 hours ago? I did, she began, and I still do. Don't you think just because I am here that I don't think you still have it up for him? But Leon has his way of doing things in a way of not listening to anything I say. Then I also realized, he seems to like your cooking. If he likes your cooking, you must be good. and I am in need of a last-minute chef for my best friend's birthday. A win-win. Asa rolled her eyes like I was stupid for not understanding what she meant. I get the praise of finding a new chef and you away from Leon. Why you get better status and recognition. If you think about it, I am honestly doing you a favor. She took a step closer and her gaze held mine. My parents are in high places, Vicky, and you might just get the chance to meet some high-end people. You'd be stupid to turn this down. Her confidence made me nauseous, or was that my tranquilizer wearing off? I pity whoever got her as a bond. I wonder what bitch blood would taste like. Asap, can I call you Asap? I feel like you coming to my home and borderline threatening me constitutes me skipping formality. There are some things I want to clarify with you. First of all, I'm really not interested in your fiancé at all. Secondly, you will be happy you'll know that I've already quit. Today was my last day. Now if there's nothing else. Asap stopped me short by raising a hand to silence me. She began digging around in her bag and fished out a loose seed. What's this? I asked as I took a hold of it. I flipped it around to see eloquent text on the cover. It was an invitation to the birthday banquet. You should feel grateful, the people who received this invitation are all important figures in Newton City with this. You were practically already someone. The idea was tempting. I had just left possibly one of the best jobs I'd ever have. I'd need a replacement, and a gig as a personal chef for a high-end clientele. Well, it sounded too good to be true. As I said from the beginning, I didn't intend to get myself involved in love again, especially with Leon. Just like Asip, I was always the innocent one in a relationship. When I fell in love with someone, I would devote myself to him. So that was why I couldn't afford to waste my last 3 years on a man. This was the final task. Then I could move on with my life and live in blissful hibernation. All right, I stated, you've got the deal. Asip smiled, actually smiled, and clapped her hands together like a child getting their favorite flavor of ice cream. She giddily made her way to the door. Finally, I'll get your coat dropped off. Be there for Melon Shark. We'll be serving caviar and various other expensive meats. The party is at noon. Oh, she said as she spun around just in the open door frame. Remember, Leon is part of the deal. I didn't hear you respond, but Asip took it as acknowledgement. Anyways, she gave one last squeal and then headed out the door, slamming it shut behind her. As soon as she left, I immediately regretted my decision. What was I doing? I despised people like her, using others to get ahead. Yet here I was, doing the same thing in hopes that I could get far enough ahead, that I could build a life without having to build a bond. I shook my head and set the invitation down on the kitchen counter before returning to my seat. Fuck, my meal was cold. Chapter ago? The next morning, after today's earlier encounter, I thought she might leave, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Truth be told, it kind of caught me off guard how fast it did occur. Less than wrap hour. I knew that she liked Kingsland Hotel and was bursting with excitement to have a full-time position doing what she loved. So when my phone dinged after dinner and I read her email, well, I was angry. Not at her, but at Asip. She had cost me another employee with her antics. If it wasn't tea for my reputation on the line, I would have a long time ago. But my name as a nightly meant nothing otherwise, not without this place, and without it, my mother's wish for me, for my financial mobility, would cease to exist. I sighed as I mulled over the email for a third time. What was I going to do? The busy season was creeping up, and I was now out another staff member. That, and if I was being honest with myself again, Vicky said, cooking was by far the best I had tasted in a long time. she would vet brought so much business to the Kingsland. Just then, someone knocked on my office door. It didn't take a genius to figure out who it was to show up at this time of morning. Always in time for the first rush of the day. Send her in, Mason, I called out, not removing my eyes from the laptop screen in front of me. Vicky's thoughts still haunted me all throughout dinner and into the morning. I didn't know the woman apart from her professional experiences, but there was something pulling at me that was telling me not to let her go just yet. I needed to fix this, and the only way to do so was to talk to her in person. When the door opened and Osip entered, I flicked my gaze up to her from behind the screen. Today she was dressed slightly differently than usual. Instead of her usual luxury leisure wear, she donned a pair of leather leggings, a colorful button-down, and matching heels. Her hair was in nice ringlets, and she somewhat resembled herself from when I first met her. I almost felt a sense of familiarity and longing, right until she spoke. We need to talk yesterday. And there it was. Osip, how many times? I've decided to let it go. Wait, what? I knew Osip, and this wasn't tough like her at all. I focused in on her thoughts. Maybe they did provide some clarity, but instead, they just confirmed it. She was elated with herself. Only something in the muddled noise grabbed my attention, and I cut off whatever she was about to say. Hold on, you made a deal with Vicky. I held her gaze. Osip tilted her head. How do you know what? Never mind. Yes, I did. I went to her house last night. I grabbed at my forehead and rubbed it. You went to her house? Oh, stop being so dramatic. Leon, yes, I went there, and yes, we talked. I offered her a position as the personal chef for Amariata's birthday. You offered her a position after making a show out of her being here yesterday. Osip sighed and smiled. She moved herself closer, trailing a finger along the top of my desk as she made her way around it. You know I was only doing that for you, right, baby? The tone in her voice made me shudder. She knew I hated pet names, and more importantly, she knew how much I despised her using this voice on me. It wouldn't work. It never did. No, I began. You were doing it for you, she huffed. I got her a frickin' job. That's more than someone like her deserved. Is that all you came here for? Osipo, do you want me to make you a trophy? Or can I get on with my work? Oh, shut the fuck up, Leon. Her eyes then moved downward toward my laptop screen, where the email from Vicky sat. What's that? A resignation letter. Vicky quit, all thanks to you. I watched as a smile formed on her face. I focused in on her thoughts. She was even more elated than before, if that was at all possible. I grimaced. Her plan was working, offering Vicky that job would put her into Osip's debt, especially if her career took off as a cause. Bonus points that it pushed her away from me. A pang settled in my heart. It wasn't a longing, but more like my soul already going through grievance at the thought of Vicky not being here anymore. What was happening to me? I was Leon Knightley, world-renowned chef, not some lovesick puppy. I was more than furious with Osip if it weren't true for my mother. I didn't want to argue with her anymore. I stood from my seat and headed for the door. Wait, where are you going? Look, Osip began as I tossed on my chef jacket and headed for the door. I have a meeting in an hour and then lunch rush, so if you don't mind. But I still need to talk to you about... But that was all I heard before I shut the office door behind me as I left. I walked down the hall into the kitchens, and the noise of the morning preparations filled my senses. When I rounded the corner, Mason was already waiting for me. Good morning, Chef. Mason, I greeted. How are the preparations this morning? Anything needed? No, sir. Everything is running smoothly. Wonderful. Just what I needed to hear. Great, I stated, watching as Frank worked alongside the others in perfect unison. I have a meeting in an hour and need to run a quick errand. Frank is in charge until I return, understood? Yes, Chef Mason replied. I gave a nod of approval and made my way through the hotel to the front entrance. The morning breeze hit my face, instantly cooling me off. I took in a deep breath and centered myself. I didn't have an errand to run. I just really needed some time alone before I started the day. I started my descent down the streets of Newton City, listening to the sounds of the morning traffic as buses and citizens began their day. I moved through the crowds of people, each of them lost within their own thoughts, which trailed back to me. I hope Trey makes the team this week. I am going to fail. They're going to fire me. Fucking Whitney with my best friend. I can believe it. Jesus, this city was more broken than I imagined. And packed. I turned a corner and decided to take a less known way to avoid any interruption. I kept my head down when suddenly my own thoughts were interrupted by my body colliding with another. My eyes looked up and I was face to face with two men in ripped clothes. They were covered in dirt and their hair was knotted. Their smell alone was enough to knock me over. It was clear they were homeless. Hey, pretty boy, the first one said, showcasing a yellow, stained smile. Got any chain? I sighed and reached into my pant pocket, pulling out a handful of change. Here, that's all I've got on me. Another man approached us and stared me down, wearing a nice chef jacket like that. I think that SLI. You definitely have more. I pulled out the lining of my pockets to show them, but it didn't satisfy them. You work at the Kingsland Hotel? The first man questioned that fancy building down the street. I nodded. Why don't you go there and get us some cash? I know you have it. Look, I really need to get back. I just came out for some fresh air. All right, the man continued, but make sure to come back with that money. I pushed past them and moved through the crowded streets again. Anywhere was better than there. Only as I made my way back to the hotel, someone's thoughts entered my mind. Louder than any other. It smells so good. Quiet. Unbelievably pure. I need to kill her. What the fuck? I stopped dead in the center of the crowd and looked around. It echoed in my head. Kill. 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 My eyes scanned the area, but couldn't find where the sound came from. Everyone looked so normal. Let me kill him. Fuck, kindred law, there's nothing more ID love than a nice, juicy, bite, kill. I jumped, his voice was so loud, it drained everything else out. It was like, he was screaming in my ear. And then just as fast as it came, it was gone. And the sounds of the cityscape rushed back into my brain. This part has ended. Thank you for listening. If you would like to continue listening to the next part, please let me know by leaving a comment.